Okay, so we're on yesterday's homework. If you just came in, notes 14. We just have to finish the very back page.
Is that all we're doing today?
We're going to finish it, and then you have your homework you should have just picked up. And then that's it, yes. Okay, so take a look. Yesterday, we talked about this number. Do you remember that did like a stretch or a shrink? Okay, and then this moved it left or right. And then this moved it up or down. So, the new letter is the B right here. Okay, here's what B does. B creates a horizontal stretch or compression. Okay? Now, normally, when you stretch something this way, if it's bigger than one, you do a stretch. If it's smaller than one, you do a compression. But your B is inside these parentheses. And do you remember that when the term is inside the parentheses, you always really do the opposite? So, because B is inside the parentheses, it has a reverse effect on the period. So here's what that means. When your B is less than 1, normally that would be a compression, but really it's going to be a stretch, which is going to make you have a longer period than 360. So normally your period is 360 degrees. Okay, but if you have a number smaller than 1, it's going to make it take longer. Okay, then if your B is greater than 1, normally you would think, oh, bigger than 1, it's a stretch. Wrong. If it's in parentheses, it has the reverse effect. So it will actually be a compression. Okay, which is going to give your graph a shorter period. Okay, so before we start that, okay, as Faye pointed out, we need to go back and fill in these little things right here. So, amplitude is going to be the range of the function, and it's the distance from the highest point to the lowest point. Yes, the notes from yesterday. So, for example, let's look at the examples we did yesterday. How long was the period on this graph if it went from up 4 to down 4? What would the full period be from here to here? 8. Very good. Okay, now let's go to this one. This is one of the ones we did yesterday as well. It was a half up and then a half down. What would your amplitude be? 1. Okay, look at this one. My number in the front was a 3. So I went up 3, then down 3. Then what's the total period? 6. Does that make sense? So that's just how tall your graph is from the lowest point to the highest point. Okay, the next one is going to be the period. This is the domain of the function. Okay, and it's going to do required for the graph of sine or cosine to complete one full cycle. Now, this is what a cycle means, is either you're doing this or you're doing this. Okay, that's a full cycle because it's basically one piece and then it's just repeated over and over again. Now, I want you to put here, for the parent graph, okay, for a regular graph, that's going to be 360 degrees. It's the distance around a circle. So for a regular graph like we did yesterday, it's always 360 degrees. Okay, then your phase shift is the horizontal shift, left or right. And then vertical shift is the vertical shift. That one doesn't have a fancy name. Okay? So we have 2 on the very back page to graph. Okay, with that new number now involved that we didn't have yesterday. So when you're ready, turn back to that very last page. And let's work those last 2 examples, and then you just have your homework left. Okay? So we're taking a look at this guy. First question, which way am I going to shift it if I have a minus 10 degrees here in the middle? Minus 10 degrees. Okay, to the right, 10 degrees. What about the plus 1 here at the back? Up 1. That's all the same. The very back page, yeah. So if I move to the right 10 degrees, that means this is 10 degrees. And that means my y-axis is going to be here. Now, do you remember yesterday that we would take each of these steps? What were we adding each time? 90. Here's why. In the calculator, if I take 360 degrees, remember that's your regular period, and I divide it into 4 pieces, I get 90. Here's the problem. If I have this number here, that changes my period. So if it is a 4 inside the parentheses, will that be a compression or a stretch? A compression because why? Inside the parentheses makes it do the opposite. So for a compression, I'm going to do 360, but I'm going to divide it by 4. So I'm going to take 360, I'm going to divide it by 4 to make it shorter. So in the calculator, what is 360 divided by 4? Then my period is 90 degrees. Okay, but whatever your period is, you need to break it up into 4 equal parts. So if I divide that by 4 again, that's going to tell me my steps. So I'll do 90 degrees divided by 4, and that gives me 22.5 degrees. Okay, so here's what that means. You're going to start at 10, but then you're going to count, instead of by 90s, by 22.5s. Okay, so I'm starting at 10. What's 10 plus 22.5 for my next marker here? Okay, 32.5. So then on my thing here, I'm going to label that 32.5 degrees. Okay, then for my next one, I'm going to plus 22.5 again. What's my next marker? 55 degrees. Then for my next one after that, I'm going to be at, okay, then for my next one, 22.5, I get 100 degrees. Then 122.5. Then 122.5 plus 22.5 more gives me 145. And 22.5 more gives me 167.5. And then last one is 190. Okay? Now, from there, everything else will be the same as yesterday. What is the vertical stretch or compression, which is the number outside in the very front? 2. And is that a stretch or a compression? Stretch. Here's why. Remember, it's only the inside number that's reversed. So if it's a 2 in the front, that's a regular stretch. Now, where are we starting our graph from? Plus 1. So I'll put 1 here. That's my middle, just like yesterday. Yeah, that's fine. And then from there, how far am I going to go up? Normally it's up 1, down 1. But this time it's stretched to be up 2. So if I'm at 1 and I go up 2, where does that put me? 3. That's the top. Okay, ladies? Okay. And then if I start at 1 and go down 2, where does that put me? -1. So now we're ready to do our graph. This is a sine graph. And so if you remember from yesterday, sine always starts at the middle. So at 10 degrees, I'll be at the middle. At 32, I'll be up. At 55, I'll be back at the middle. Then at 77, I'll be down. 100, I'll be middle. 122, I'll be up, then middle, then down, then middle. And then remember, you're just graphing your little squiggly graph like that. Okay, but instead of me just going to 720 every time, 360 twice, Okay, my graph is shrunk in to where it's already done 2 revolutions by 190. Okay? And then what would my amplitude be if this distance is 2 and this distance is 2? My total amplitude is 4. Okay? Alright, let's do one more like that, but this one we're going to change to a cosine to make sure that you remember both of them. So remember that sine x always starts in the middle. So that's why at 10 degrees I started in that central point. We're going to change number 4 to be cosine so that we can look at an example of each. So come down to number 4 and make that a cosine instead. Okay? So take a look at number 4. First thing, which way are we shifting our graph if I have a minus 15 degrees? To the right 15. So this is going to be 15 degrees, which puts my y-axis right there. Now, do I also have a number that's going to move it up or down? No, so I'm going to put none. Or if you want to, you can think about it like you have a plus here at the back. So I'm not moving it up or down, I'm only moving it to the side. Okay, next I want a horizontal stretch or compression. Remember, that's the inside number. So what's the inside number here? A third. And a third is not a compression, it's a stretch. Why is it a stretch? Because it has the reverse effect because it's inside. Now, for a third, you're going to take your 360, and because it's a stretch, you're going to multiply by 3. So instead of taking only 360 degrees, I'm going to multiply that by 3. That's my period, 1080. And then for my steps, I have to divide that into 4 equal pieces. So I'll divide by 4. So if you want to put here, this is always the period, divide by 4. So I get 270. So what that means is I'm going to start at 15 degrees, and then I'm going to add 270 each time to know what to put as the next markers. Okay, so 15 plus 270. My next marker is 285. Okay, plus 270 again. What's my next marker? 555. Yes? Yeah, definitely. Bye, Yeti. Good job. Okay, so fill out the next ones. What are you adding each time? 270. Okay, and then once you've labeled all the markers, then we'll shift our graph. So 55 plus 270, my next marker is an 825. Plus 270 is a 1095. Plus 270 is a 1365. Then a 1635, then a 1905, then a 2175. Okay? The back of it, just kind of like mess with the cord behind it. Yeah. Okay, now, is this one moved up or down? Is this one moved up or down? No, because it's just a plus here in the back. So this is going to stay the middle. Okay? Okay, and then look at the number in the very front. It's a half, so is it a compression or a stretch? Now remember, the half on the outside isn't reverse, so it would still be a compression. So what that means is from the middle, it's only going to go up a half, and then down a negative a half, and then up a half, and then down a half, and then up a half, and then down a half. Okay, so this is the top, this is the bottom. Now, remember what we said, sine starts in the middle, but cosine starts high. So when I put my first marker here, I'm going to start at 15 up, then 285 middle, then 55 down, then middle, then up, then middle, then down, then middle, then up. Huh? I thought so. Okay? And then graph your little thingy. Here it goes. Like that. Make sense? Okay, then how tall is it from the top to the bottom if each of these are a half? 1. Does that make sense? Okay, so take a look at today's homework. Okay, I'll do one of them with you. You can pick, and then you have to do the other 3. There are only 4. Number 3. Okay, decide. If you don't want to do notes, that's fine. Okay, we're almost done. You can take it if you need it, Crystal. Okay. Alright, so we're doing number 3. Now, the first thing that I want to point out to you here is that your -7 is in the front. Okay, if you don't like that, you're welcome to just make it a -7 in the back. Okay, it doesn't matter if it's written like this or if it's written the way that it is right now. Okay, a -7 here and a -7 here do the exact same thing. Okay, what does the -7 do to the way the graph is shifted? Up, down, left, or right? Which way? So down 7. And then what does the -10 do? To the right 3. So, or I'm sorry, to the right 10 degrees, my bad. So my 10 degrees is here. And then I need to figure out what I'm counting by. If it's a 3 in the middle, is that a stretch or a compression? If it's in the middle, that's a compression. Why is it a compression? Because a 3 in the middle does the opposite. So I need to take my 360 and divide it by 3. What is 360 divided by 3 to tell me my period? 120, and then how do I find the steps? Divide it by 4, and that tells me my steps are going to be in 30 degrees. So if my first one is 10 degrees and I add 30, what do I get? 40. Then I add 30 again, what do I get? Then I add 30 again. Then 130, 160, 190, 210, and 240. Okay, then from there, we're shifting our graph down 7. So let's draw our y-axis here. And then we'll say this is -7. That's going to be the middle. Now, if there was a number in front of cosine that would stretch or compress my graph, is there one of those here? Is there a number in front of cosine in this spot? Then that means it stays a 1. So if I go up 1 from -7, what does that put me at? -6. What about if I go down 1 from -7? -8. And then that's going to be your high point and your low point. This is a cosine graph, so it starts high at the top. So at 10 degrees, I'm at the top. At 40 degrees, I'm at the middle. 70, I'm at the bottom. Okay, and then you're just following that same process each time. And then you're drawing your graph. Like that. Okay, then what should I put for vertical stretch or compression? What would I put for that? Did I have one? No, so I would just put none. And then I would put there is no number in front of cosine. Okay, because that's the number that tells me if I have a stretch or compression. Then what is my amplitude from the top to the bottom? 2. Because it's 1 up and then 1 down. That's a total of 2. Okay, last one that I'm going to help you set up is just the axis. Number 4 where should you shift number 4? To the left 10 degrees, and then up 3. So if I go to the left 10, what does that make my first marker? Negative 10. Very good. So think about, if this is negative 10 degrees, because I had to go to the left 10, then my y-axis would need to be here. Do I have a stretch or a compression? It's a half in the middle, which is really a stretch. So what am I going to times by? Well, if it's a half, I want to times by 2. If it was a third, what would I times by? What if it was a fourth? I would times by 4. But if it's a half, I'm going to times by 2, which gives me 720. And then how do I find my steps? Divide by 4. So I'll do 720, divide by 4 equal pieces. Each step will be 180. And that's how much you're going up each time to get the next marker. So if I'm at negative 10 and I add 180, what will that put me at? 170. So negative 10 plus 180 gives me 170. Then add 180 again, it gives me 350, etc., etc., etc. on the x-axis. Make sense? So that's that's 350. Then the next one would be what? 350 plus 180, it's 530, right? Okay, then 530 plus 180 gives me 710. Okay, you can finish that. Okay, then for my vertical shift, which way am I shifting my middle line? Up 3. So we'll say 3, that's the middle. And then I'm going up or down, how many because of my stretch? Okay, and it's not written here, but my vertical, is it a stretch or a compression if there's a 12 in the front? A stretch of 12. So if I start at 3 and I go up 12, where does that put me at? Wait 1 second. That put me at 15. And then what about if I start at 3 but I go down 12? What would that put you at? 3 minus 12 would put you at negative what? Negative 9. And then where does cosine start? High or middle? Cosine starts high. So your negative 10 would be here. 170 would be middle. 350 would be low, then middle, then high, then middle, then low, then middle, then high. And you'd have like a really tall one. Okay? It doesn't have to look perfect, just do your best. Okay? So you have 2 left. You have like 20 minutes. That should be enough time to do the last 2. Okay? Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. And then just do homework on Tuesday. And then y'all know you don't have school on Monday.